One of the biggest threats to your security, privacy, and anonymity online is potentially, unfortunately, your own government. This threat is coming from a number of fronts, but two main fronts. One is the push to weaken and regulate encryption, and the other is to legalize and, I guess, legitimize mass surveillance and spying on its citizens. Many countries are talking about implementing policies that limit encryption and policies to legitimize and legalize spying that has been going on anyway illegally for years. And in fact, by the time you listen to this, because it's moving so fast in your particular country, things may have changed and it may now be more legal to spy on you, and encryption may be regulated to a further extent. This regulation and mandating of insecurity and legalized spying is going on in many places: United States, the UK, China, Russia, Brazil, India, etc. The UK has got the Data Communications Bill, which includes recording 12 months of internet history and other Orwellian measures. Other examples that show the tide of change in other countries: you have WhatsApp being banned for 48 hours in Brazil because of the encryption by the government. India has some very strong ideas on limiting encryption. Kazakhstan illegally requiring backdoors. Encryption is fundamentally mathematics. It cannot be banned. The horse has already left the stable. It's been created. It cannot be weakened just for a terrorist or a criminal or for someone who you want to have weak encryption. Those people will just use the strong encryption that's already out there, and everyone else will be stuck with weakened security and weakened encryption because they're forced to use the weak encryption. If it is weakened or backdoored, it is weakened for everyone, including the hackers trying to compromise our systems. Something like this was actually tried already. It was the crypto wars in the 1990s. Something called the Clipper chip was proposed by the US government, and a flaw was found in it, and luckily there was no widespread adoption because this chip was going to be put into every electronic device that was going to do encryption, so that the government could bypass that encryption and look at what it is you were doing. So if that had happened, it would have been a complete disaster because of the vulnerability that was found in it. This is the problem. If you weaken encryption, you can weaken it for everybody. Terrorists and criminals will continue to use strong encryption even if normal citizens are banned. There is no evidence that weakening encryption will help at all. And to add to all that, we have no feasible technical way of achieving this. Unfortunately, all of this stuff is perhaps too complicated for people to really grasp, those people that make decisions on these things, or maybe they do understand it, but because of political agendas, they're still pushing forward. This is Matt Blaze speaking to a US congressional committee on the infeasibility of these plans, and it's definitely worth a watch, so I'm going to play it now. It's only 5 minutes long.
Dr. Blaze, 5 minutes to you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as a technologist, I'm finding myself in the very curious position of participating in a debate over the desirability of something that sounds, wonderful, which is security systems that can be bypassed by the good guys, but that also reliably keep the bad guys out. And we could certainly discuss that. But as a technologist, I can't ignore this stark reality, which is simply that it can't be done safely. And if we make wishful policies that assume and pretend that we can, there will be terrible consequences for our economy and for our national security. So it would be difficult to overstate today the importance of robust, reliable computing and communications to our personal, commercial, and national security. Modern computing and network technologies are obviously yielding great benefits to our society, and we are depending on them to be reliable and trustworthy in the same way that we depend on power and water and the rest of our critical infrastructure today. But unfortunately, software-based systems, the foundation on which all of this modern communications technology is based, are also notoriously vulnerable to attack by criminals and by hostile nation states. Large-scale data breaches, of course, are literally a daily occurrence, and this problem is getting worse rather than better as we build larger and more complex systems. And it's really not an exaggeration to characterize the state of software security as an emerging national crisis. And the sad truth behind this is that computer science, my field, simply does not know how to build complex, large-scale software that has reliably correct behavior. And this is not a new problem. It has nothing to do with encryption or modern technology. It's been the central focus of computing research since the dawn of the programmable computer. And as new technology allows us to build larger and more complex systems, the problem of ensuring their reliability becomes actually exponentially harder with more and more components interacting with each other. So as we integrate insecure, vulnerable systems into the fabric of our economy, the consequences of those systems failing become both more likely and increasingly serious. Unfortunately, there is no magic bullet for securing software-based systems. Large systems are fundamentally risky, and this is something that we can at best manage rather than fix outright. There are really only two known ways to manage the risk of unreliable and insecure software. One is the use of encryption, which allows us to process sensitive data over insecure media and in insecure software systems to the extent that we can. And the other is to design our software systems to be as small and as simple as we possibly can, to minimize the number of features that a malicious attacker might be able to find flaws to exploit. And this is why proposals for law enforcement access features frighten me so much. Cryptographic systems are among the most fragile and subtle elements of modern software. We often discover devastating weaknesses in even very simple cryptographic systems years after they're designed and fielded. What third-party access requirements do is take even very simple problems that we don't really know how to solve and turn them into far more complex problems that we really have no chance of reliably solving. So backdoor cryptography of the kind advocated by the FBI, might solve some problems if we could do it, but it's a notoriously and well-known difficult problem. We've found subtle flaws even in systems designed by the National Security Agency, such as the Clipper chip 2 decades ago. And even if we could get the cryptography right, we'd be left with the problem of integrating access features into the software. Requiring designers to design around third-party access requirements will basically undermine our already tenuous ability to defend against attack. It's tempting to frame this debate as being between personal privacy and law enforcement, but in fact the stakes are higher than that. We just can't do what the FBI is asking without seriously weakening our infrastructure. The ultimate beneficiaries will be criminals and rival nation states. Congress faces a crucial choice here to effectively legislate mandatory insecurity in our critical infrastructure, or to recognize the critical importance of robust security in preventing crime in our increasingly connected world. Thank you very much.
This here is a good paper to read. It's from a number of top crypto experts, including some of the people that actually design the crypto that we're going to talk about on the course, on why mandating insecurity is a bad idea. So if you want to dig deeper into that, give that a read as your homework. Another quick document that you can read is the case against regulating encryption technology, only a couple of pages. And to give you more of a background, this is a good read. This is the 9 epic failures of regulating encryption. There's a great report to give you an idea of the number of crypto products that are out there by Bruce Schneier. This is his worldwide survey of encryption products. Give that a Google. There's a PDF version which is here. There's also an Excel version. The Excel is pretty cool because you can sort by the type. So you can look at all the different types of crypto products, and maybe when we get to those sections and those products, you can see all the ones that are out there. It finds 865 hardware and software products incorporating encryption from 55 different countries. So obviously, if you have a law in one country, it's not going to affect all the other countries, and people can just use the crypto from whichever country they choose to use it from. Let's move on to the legalization of spying and mass surveillance now, and I think we can start with some quotes from Edward Snowden. So here we have arguing that you don't care about the right to privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different than saying you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say. He continues, people who use the I have nothing to hide line don't understand the basic foundation of human rights. Nobody needs to justify why they need a right. The burden of justification falls on the one seeking to infringe upon the right. If one person chooses to disregard his right to privacy, that doesn't automatically mean everyone should follow suit either. You can't give away the rights of others because they're not useful to you. More simply, the majority cannot vote away the natural rights of the minority. My view is this: when people know they are being watched, they are being spied on, they alter what they do. They are no longer free. Terrorists want us to lose our freedom. By creating mass surveillance to prevent terrorism, by creating that mass surveillance infrastructure, we lose the very freedom we are trying to protect. But the counter-argument to this is that we will be more secure from mass surveillance. We'll be more safe from mass surveillance. But the evidence is thin to support that. The former head of the NSA Global Intelligence Gathering Operations is a guy called Bill Binney. He says that mass surveillance interferes with the government's ability to catch bad guys, and that the government's failure in terms of 9/11, the Boston bombing, the Texas shooting and other terrorist attacks was because it was overwhelmed with data from mass surveillance. For me, the issue of mass surveillance is about giving away too much power to a government. Key questions to consider and to ask: can you trust all the people, government officers, agencies, companies and contractors with your personal and private data gathered through this mass surveillance? Can you trust that they will always have your best interests at heart and that they will act justly with this power, this new power that they will have? And not just now, but in the future and with your children, because your children will inherit a watched world. This data will be kept, and any slight deviation from what is considered acceptable could be used against you if you oppose those in current power. Consider the civil rights movement. If mass surveillance was going on during that political movement, how would it affect a political change for black people in the United States? Would civil rights have happened much slower, more violently because of the mass surveillance, or would it have been crushed completely so that it wouldn't even exist now if we had mass surveillance? Things to consider. Also, consider donating to some of these privacy causes if privacy is something that you are particularly interested and passionate about. Regulating encryption, mandating insecurity, and legalizing spying is unfortunately an active threat that's potentially on your threat landscape that you need to be aware of. If your ability to use encryption is reduced, then your security will be reduced as well, and you will need other mitigating controls.